So my name is Adriana Cerundolo, and I lead the Google Developer Group program globally. I have the privilege of doing that. I'm going to be sharing with you some key learnings of how we run GDGs that hopefully will help you in cultivating your own communities. So what is GDG? Ultimately, Google Developer Groups are in-person meetups of developers coming together around a shared passion for technology, and specifically Google technologies. So Google has a wide variety of developer tools for both web and mobile developers, and GDG events cover that full gamut. The actual event topics are going to depend upon whatever the local needs and interests are of that local chapter. In terms of who comes to GDGs, primarily if you look at our demographic audience globally, there are a lot of professional developers, but ultimately anyone who has an interest in learning, regardless of your experience or skill level or role, is welcome to attend. So we do have entrepreneurs and designers and people that are in tech adjacent roles coming and learning about technology through these events. GDGs started ultimately with a few developers locally that organically began creating community around Google Tech. We actually have one of the founders here in the audience, Van Riper, from Silicon Valley. Yeah, Van. And also in the Czech Republic and the Philippines. So Google caught wind of this movement of people coming together around their developer technologies and thought, well, this is a great way for us to build real relationships with developers on the ground. Let's create a brand and support this. And so the Google Technology User Group brand was formed. Over the next few years, the demand for this community grew, and Google decided to provide better structure to support this growth of community and rebrand it to Google Developer Groups, with the emphasis on the fact that the audience is the developers themselves that are playing with the technology and not the users. So we went from just a couple organizers around the globe or 3 key locations to now up to 2,000 organizers that are supporting this community globally, and we have 500 of them here that came to a organizer summit this past May. So why does Google support GDGs? What's the point, right? So ultimately, Google believes, I believe, that innovation comes from creating an environment that is fostering learning and inviting different ideas and people in with that learning to create new things, right? And technological innovation specifically is happening with the developers that are playing with bleeding edge technology and bringing their ideas to life. So by Google encouraging and supporting self-organized community around their developer technologies, they're ultimately becoming relatable or staying relevant to the future of technology and also creating that pathway of what that looks like. So the photo here is of GDG organizers in Nairobi, Kenya. They met through the GDG community, and together they've created a few projects, one of which is called Infinity Space, which is an offline platform an offline version of the internet for all of Africa. So this is something that obviously is a big project that they have funding around, and they're currently working on that now. And in the meantime, they also launched a mobile app for local vendors of handmade goods. So those are just a couple projects that are coming out of the passion for technology from these GDG communities. So how does Google support this community? And Amir mentioned this earlier. We fall under the engineering organization. We do not fall under marketing as the community, the program within Google that supports GDGs. This is super important for several reasons. First of all, developers do not fare well and are very skeptical of marketing and sales speak. They have no interest in learning about technologies from people that have no idea how they work. And so to be relevant to developers and to have credibility as a program, it's really important that we fall under the org where the team that actually are building the technologies that they're using is a part of. And this is helpful for both ways. So, Amir mentioned the feedback loop. This is a great way for us to develop true relationships with the developers and understand what their needs are so we can bring it back to the product teams and make our products better. Because ultimately, the developer technologies that we're creating are only as good as the developers that are using them and how easy they are to use for developers. And then vice versa, by being so close to these product teams, they're able to develop content and even become speakers of different GDG events around the world. So we're able to provide that training and use GDG events as a funnel to train developers on how to best use our products, so that ultimately we're creating quality apps on our technologies. So how else does Google support GDGs? I mentioned the relationship with Google, but also by being a GDG organizer, say here in San Francisco, I have a network of up to 2,000 organizers around the world that are doing the same thing as I am, only in other parts of the world, right? And so this is a rich network of experts on community, of other people that are interested in my same technologies, and you have a wide variety of opportunities that come out both professionally and personally within that community. Google does offer a limited amount of budget for the actual events themselves. However, we encourage organizers and the chapters to be self-sufficient financially and go and find sponsors locally to support them, because we know that this is the best way for them to be self-sufficient and not reliant on Google or any other one sponsor. We also created the GDG brand. So our marketing team or design team came up with the logo and GDG and the font that's used. But ultimately, this is a Creative Commons logo, which means that organizers locally can add some local flair to use this logo. And by having this one logo, each individual chapter feels like they're part of the larger global community, which they are. So there's three key tenets of GDG that I feel are integral to maintain the integrity of this program. First of all, it's volunteer run. So each of these GDG organizers in their local chapters, they are not Google employees. They are not paid by Google. So why are they doing it? They have an intrinsic motivation. They see value in bringing people together around technology. They have an interest in mixing relationships and in-person learning with technology and bringing those ideas to life. This is the fuel of what GDGs are all about. And so as the team and as the leader, I'm not really a leader, I'm a supporter of these influencers locally that can reach thousands of developers locally. My job is to understand what motivates them as an organizer. What do they need to be successful as community leaders or content to be more successful with technology, and to fuel that and empower them to be the best that they can be. Secondly, they are independent, so we do not dictate what content they share at their events. Ultimately, to be a GDG chapter, considered an active chapter, you need to literally hold one event per quarter, every 3 months, on a Google relevant technology. Other than that, of course, and that makes sense, because otherwise you're not a Google developer group, right? But other than that, we encourage them to understand what are the needs and the interests of their local community, and then build topics around that so that the GDG events become an incubator for those ideas. GDGs are open to anyone who's interested in Google Tech, as I mentioned, regardless of your background or experience or your role. Most events are free unless there's a nominal fee to cover event costs. And we also encourage our organizers to be considerate of diversity and inclusion in their member base. We even have Women Tech Maker lead organizers that their sole role is to create events that promote diversity and inclusion. So where are we now? GDGs are a global movement of over 600 active chapters in over 100 countries, led by an awesome team of 2,000 organizers, reaching on average 25,000 attendees monthly. So just to wrap up here, how do we measure the success? This is always a really hard question for any community organizer. Ultimately, anything that captures in metrics how developers are being successful and growing their skills is what we look at. One of the main metrics is number of developers trained, but also we capture stories, such as that one that I shared in GDG Nairobi of the projects that are coming out of these events. But none of that can happen without very carefully monitoring community health. What is the burnout rate of organizers? How can we help them stay motivated and energized, and maintaining the quality of the events as well? So one way in which we support developer success is through a program called Study Jams, which are leveraging the GDG communities to run in-person study groups around online Google developer courses. We did this past year with our Android for Beginners course, and this was a great win for Google and for the community because it increased the completion rate from the average of 13% to 51% for those students that were working with other GDGs in an in-person environment. And for the Android team, it reached 4,000 students that it otherwise wouldn't have that learned Android. Finally, GDGs also make social impact. There's a lot of stories, one of which is in 2013 when Typhoon Haiyan hit the Philippines. The local GDGs were the first ones to respond and create the crisis response map and help the people go and find survivors in the People Finder. So those are just a couple stories, anecdotes. Please come and to developers.google.com to find a GDG near you. And I will be around for the rest of the day to answer any questions, and I look forward to talking with you. So thanks.